Very well versed in the opening as well. He's kind of the typical player who's been brought up in the computer generation. He loves to calculate, he loves to be very direct if possible, and we've seen that in his games. That's why he's had a few defeats. Everyone does, but he's also had some great victories because he's not scared to go for the opponent. And here we see a queen's pawn opening. Up until this last move, it was following the game Neiman-Carlsen. Yes. I'm glad this one's still going now, but maybe Carlsen will show us why he was so scared of continuing that game as black.
Because this is good for white?
This is a very typical opening. It's now what we call the Nimzo Indian defense. And this last move is maybe the riskiest, one of the most provocative moves. Oh. It's asking black to capture the white knight with a dark squared bishop. There we go, there's been an exchange. But white gets these doubled pawns now on the c-file, and long term, that's pretty much an eternal weakness. In return, white gets the bishop pair, 2 bishops now. Black, in return, has a bishop and knight combo, and white will try to occupy the center. Magnus making a bit of a face there, maybe not expecting that move. Black had a bunch of options. Black could also have pushed a couple of different pawns. And this is the critical try. White is getting ready to build the ultimate pawn center. If white's pawn in front of his king can step forward 2 squares, he'll control the whole middle of the board. Very kind of double-edged play so far in the opening.
So one observation, let's see if I've learned anything. Magnus, with the white pieces, he's not going to castle queenside in this one.
Yes.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, that queenside is too open right now.
Yeah.
It takes a while, though, to castle the other way. He still needs to push a pawn, then move the white light squared bishop, then move the white knight, then he can castle. So he's still pretty much 3 or 4 moves away. Cristopher has to try and profit from that. In the meantime, OK, this knight move, it is known. There is a big threat. Black's queen was threatening to jump out with a nasty check, but Magnus is ready to block that with his knight if he needs to. The white knight looks a bit odd, but it can retreat to the f2 square, where it will sit nice and defensively.
G4.
Yeah. You've seen this before, Simon?
No, I mean, I was happy, obviously, to see black moving the f-pawn because it resembles my favourite opening, which is called the Dutch, but I haven't seen this g4 move, David. Is this still, or you've anchor in theory? I mean, I guess it is.
I think it is.
Still theory. Magnus Carlsen actually played this with white pieces against Alexander Morozovich. That was a win for Magnus.
Okay.
I remember Michael Adams, the English #1, being on the black side of this position before as well. That was a few years ago. Essentially, white is just opening things up on the king side, so maybe Kaya, he won't be casting queenside or kingside white in this game. He's kind of pushed pawns on both flanks, but for now the white king's safe-ish in the centre. He's just trying to open up the position for those white bishops.
Very interesting.
I will have a bet with you, Kaya.
Okay, nice.
I will bet, because you said he's not going to castle queenside, that he castles queenside.
Okay.
Because that's the way life works,
and so,
isn't it?
I can bet on either kingside or no castling?
You can go, if he castles queenside, I win. If he doesn't, you can do whatever else, you win.
I take the bet. I take the bet.
Okay.
What are you betting, guys?
Good night, Saturday.
A drink, I reckon.
Drink.
Probably makes sense. First round, so yeah. So we'll see now. So I need white to castle that king on the weaker side of the board. It doesn't look very likely, but as we've jinxed it, I kind of feel that he might do at some point. And very interesting position, though, right, this so far?
I mean, this looks like both players definitely want to take big risks to win. Very, very imbalanced, and that's what we call the commentator's curse, right? If we say one specific thing is not going to happen, it always happens.
That's why I bet on it. I just thought, you know, it does look like he can't castle queenside. That's why he will. Yeah. You know, that's just the way it works in life, isn't it?
Yeah, it looks more likely now that might happen than 2-3 moves ago.
Yeah.
Maybe we can jump in.
I was going to say, you know, there has been a game in the database against Sergei Volkin, against Max Fortune, as bad news for you, Simon, because if they follow that game and judging by that rook move, the white king is destined to go queenside.
No, I win.
Simon.
I win.
That's good news for Simon.
Bad news for Kaya. So if the white king goes queenside, I win myself a nice cheeky beer.
Oh.
So.
Well, yeah, sorry, Kaya.
But that looks crazy.
And the bad thing, Kaya, is that Magnus's last move, moving the rook, means he definitely can't castle kingside. It's not legal anymore. So either the king is destined to stay in the centre, or it's going one way.
Well, what will you guys do? What looks like the best choice for you guys?
Probably castling queenside. It's changed so much. For example, here, the rook is lining up against the black king, so it would make sense for Cristopher at some point to just move his king into the corner. Then white, for example, could move his queen. I'm not sure the best square. and suddenly...
And we know what's happening next. Come on, Kingy, get yourself over there. And
For example.
and I would like to clarify, like a beer in Norway is like the same as a house nearly anywhere else in the world. So it's really worth winning that bet, I feel.
Need to start saving.
Yeah.
No more food for me this week.
This white king is very open, but I guess it does have a lot of pawns in front to protect it. It could, for example, slide over and hide behind this pawn. Still looks very shaky, very weak over here. But, OK, Cristopher, he didn't go for that king move. He just pushed a pawn. Very sensible. And is it time? Will Magnus get you that beer, Simon? Will he move his queen to this square? Or if he moves his queen in any direction, essentially, his next move is definitely going to be to castle queenside. So.
Like it.
Yeah, I'm not so sure. I think Kaya might still be OK. I suspect that the white king might find a home on the f2 square.
Yeah, I think it's kind of 50-50. I have to say, I think it's still a fair bet, because there's many other moves, isn't there, David? I mean, you could start by moving your knight on the rim. That's saying knights on the rim are dim, or there's many sayings like that. You could start moving that towards the centre. Looks very logical. And I think that's probably what I would think about doing. Or you could try to get your light square bishop in the game as well, but I don't think you need to rush for that. So there's other plans here, certainly. I think in some ways, though, Cristopher should be quite happy with this position, David and Jovanka, because he wants a sharp game. He wants counter-attacking, and, you know, with what might be opposite side castling, he's going to get tactical opportunities, which suits his style. So it could work in his favour.
Yeah, it suits his style, and he's never really going to beat Magnus in a kind of slow strategic battle or in kind of a manoeuvring type of endgame. So, I mean, this is pretty much all you can hope for, especially with the black pieces, if you want to win. Of course, a draw is a decent result against Magnus, and you can do that in a variety of ways if you play really, really well. But here, all three results are possible, and for the standings, I mean, a win here would be huge for Cristopher. OK, the knight does centralise, as you pointed out, Simon. Very logical move. It's good for you, Kaya. The longer he delays castling, the less likely it will become.
Yep.
We haven't kind of clarified the rules when it comes to this bet. What happens if the king does not move?
Then I win.
Then I lose, yeah. Basically, he has to castle throughout the game. If he doesn't castle queenside, I will happily buy Kaya. And you drink wine as well. Yeah, really expensive wine probably as well. Yeah, OK. Oh, come on, beer, save me. So,
You're lucky you're not betting against me, because I don't drink wine or beer.
Oh, that'd be a good bet then.
Yeah.
So,
No.
a nice fizzy water for you, Jovanka.
Actually, I would have to go up. Take you
the spirits.
Whiskey, yeah.
Oh, wow. OK. The hard stuff.
Yeah.
So, whiskey in Norway, I can only imagine how much that costs.
So don't bet with me.
No. But yeah, I mean, it's a weird position. How does black get counterplay here? I mean, black's got to develop those queenside pieces, I guess. I mean, if I was black here, I'd be looking at maybe throwing the knight to the edge, just trying to get some ideas going from the black side.
Which knight are you thinking, Simon? One of these pieces, maybe?
Yeah, I'm thinking one of the undeveloped pieces. I can maybe target those double pawns. This is a very normal plan in this opening, the Nimzo Indian. When you've got, we call them double pawns in front of each other. They're generally quite weak because they're a bit harder to defend. They're a bit clumsy. So a very normal idea is to attack those pawns. So this would be, logical. Move the knight to try and come in, and maybe you can back it up with a bishop attacking that pawn, and even a queen at some stage if things go ideally. So that looks like one plan, at least, that black could try here.
Very sensible. He plays that move.
He has. I think he's got to try to get counterplay. I don't know if Magnus has got anything immediate. I feel like maybe not at the moment. He's just got to get some more pieces in the game. Very interesting position.
I mean, do you like Magnus's position? It looks strange to me with the pawns all over the place.
It's very weird. I wouldn't like it just because my style, I want a bit more control, a bit more harmony, and fewer kind of long-term deficiencies like these pawns. But maybe, Simon, you will like the kind of attacking potential that white has on this open line. The black king is also quite, well, it's a significant target. You have the potential of more central pawns. It's not possible right now, but if white can ever kind of support this pawn push, then white will have three nice pawns in the centre of the board. So there are pluses and minuses for both sides. Black is kind of deprived of any dark square control because he's parted with his dark square bishop earlier in the game. And black's pieces still need a while to come out into the game. It's maybe a bit easier for white's pieces to do that. So, yeah, I mean, it's just a fascinating position. It's so imbalanced, and it shows that Magnus is really playing for the win, but Cristopher fighting fire with fire. And right now, I'm expecting either this bishop to come out. Not sure really what it's doing there, but it looks like a decent square, or what else? The white queen might have to move. It might be time to get ready for Simon to win that bet. The queen might move, and the king might run away to safety.
Yeah, maybe the white knight. Could it come into the centre? I mean, it's one of those weird positions, isn't it, Jovanka, where there's so many peculiar ideas, I guess.
I know. I mean, it's very, very strange. I almost feel like black probably has to wait and see what white does before actually taking any decisions as to where to develop the minor pieces, you know, because then at least the plans are simpler. Because as it stands, there seems to be a rather odd position. I've never seen anything like this.
It's a very weird position, and I really do think that would favour Cristopher, you know, because, you know, if we have a standard kind of position, Magnus' experience will come through, and the more weird the position, I think the more, you know, more unbalanced.
And he's still so young. There's so many positions he hasn't seen yet.
There is, yeah. I know.
Imagine when he's seen them all.
Oh,
Kyle wins the bet.
Oh, dear.
Oh, that's so nice, Magnus. Very good. All right.
There goes a glass of wine and £50.
Yeah, the king deciding to park itself on this square.
Yeah.
It looks safer here, to me.
It does look safer, but if you look at black's rook, the black rook next to his king, the black rook's on the same file as this white king. So long term, there might be some tricks.
And look at the bar. It's gone in Christopher's favour after that really rubbish move. Magnus, you deserve to lose now for not winning my bet. So, yeah, I mean, but we did mention that. Yeah. It's quite a sensible square.
It's logical. And if worst comes to the worst, the white king only needs 2 more moves to kind of shuffle to the right and then shuffle into the bottom right corner. And in the corner of the board, it will be completely safe. So Magnus, I think he's just keeping his options open. He didn't feel that the queen side was safe long term. He had the same instinct as Kaya there, but yeah, right now it's still very tense. Maybe that's the Norwegian school of chess, just never castle queenside. Yeah, and it's up to Cristopher, as Jovanka mentioned, to try and activate those black pieces. It's not entirely easy. Black's light squared bishop still struggling to get anywhere active.
Yeah, and I quite like that move because white's also preparing maybe a little pawn push with the king is guarding a dark square diagonally. You know, that the black queen may have jumped into, so you can move your pawn up 1 square and the light square bishop. You know, at the start of the game, you just want to play kind of simple moves, don't you? You want to develop your knights and bishops at the start of the game, and the only piece that Magnus hasn't developed is his light square bishop, and now he's trying to possibly prepare that one to come into the centre, which kind of looks like the ideal square because it's pointing towards black's king. So that maybe is what the real reason behind this king move is. So yeah, it is like what does black do now? I mean, this looks really logical, doesn't it, David? The knight jumping over there.
But now your move, Simon, pushing the pawn forward. You defend it with the bishop. And as you mentioned, this pawn push was never, ever possible until your king supported it. Yeah, this is actually the dream square. You're talking to your pieces there, aren't you?
Yeah, and they're all kind of working well. And you've got the open... I mean, white's got this lovely, we call it open file. You know, your pieces that work in a straight line, rooks and queens, they love it when there's no pawns in the way of them because they can zoom up the board, do zoomies all the way towards the opponent's king. So that is it's a nice little zoomie towards the black king there, and that rook wants.
There's some tactics maybe against this pawn that will be pinned.
Certainly.
But yeah, right now, Cristopher struggling to come up with a move. I mean, this one looks natural, it's just how you back it up. And you can't develop your bishop right now because it will simply be captured or it can be forked immediately. For example, in this way, attacking 2 pieces at once. You can develop to the piece to this square. The bishop can go to d7, but it's not really doing much there, to be honest.
And you leave yourself vulnerable to captures like bishop takes knight.
Yeah, this is true. Actually, it might be winning, as you mentioned, Jovanka, hitting this rook, also hitting this pawn. And there'll be some forks. Instead, Cristopher brings his knight back to the edge of the board. It was here about 5-6 moves ago, the black knight. And wow, what a move from Magnus. He meets this offer of a knight trade by pushing his doubled pawn forward. What could the idea be there? Well,
he's really opening the light squares towards black's king, isn't he, here? So The problem with one of Cristopher's earlier moves, moving that pawn in front of the rook, is you do weaken the black king. And I think Magnus's idea is to try and punish that with that diagonal, David, that you pointed out, maybe somehow. But it's risky, right? I mean, you're potentially losing a pawn here. You're sacrificing a pawn. And he played that immediately without any thought as well. So very interesting position. I'm glad we picked this game.
Yeah.
This is a good game to pick. So
shaping up nicely. What happens now, guys, though, if the pawn is just captured? What could Magnus's plan be?
I had no
Give a
idea.
check.
I just like...
If Patzer sees check, Patzer plays check.
Okay,
Yeah.
this is a check. The king has to run into the corner.
And now what? Is it's just,
No more checks.
There's no more checks.
OK. Well, he wants to. I think he wants to do that check with a bishop,
Yeah.
Ivanka, which makes it's a bit more harmonious, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like, because then the queen might want to come the other way. Because if the queen can come over to the king's side, I like this idea. I think this is the idea. So the bishop wants to check,
For example, yeah.
and then the queen, because you need the queen to kill your opponent's king normally, and now you can start moving that one over towards the king's side, and that's starting to look really dangerous, that position, I think, for black.
Yeah.
This must be the idea, I guess.
Must be, you're right. And Magnus has given up a pawn, but maybe pawns aren't too important right now. It's all about the two bishops. For example, if there is a knight trade ever, these two bishops are going to be fantastic pieces. And Cristopher, you react by preempting any checks. If we go back to the current position, he just puts his king in the corner voluntarily.
Do you want to have another bet, Kaya?
Depends.
I'm going to bet that Magnus doesn't win this game. That's a really risky bet, but I'm already one bet down. I've got to up the antes now. So I'm gonna, and that is a good bet. You could be 2 glasses of wine up on the Saturday.
What is this?
Oh, well, I'm just thought. I mean, you can bet a Coke, or well, it doesn't have to be wine. It could be
Wait, so you're betting that it's a draw or a win for Cristopher?
Yes.
Oh wait, so that would be Kaya would have 2 results. You would have 1.
No, I'd have
Other
2.
way around,
I'd
yeah.
have 2.
Other way around. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
So I would bet that either black is going to draw this game or win this game, which is a really... I'm not sure I like that bet. I just kind of like the way the position's
You
going
like
for black.
betting. You know what? I'll set a good example to be happy with my 1 win and just step away from more betting.
Very wise, I feel.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's not really a bet. It's a sportsman. We don't agree with betting. It's a sportsman thing.
It's probably, you are one of the best chess players in the world. You know, you love competition. You just can't.
Do you know there's an online word in the chess world to do with what you just did? It's called win quit.
Win quit. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Very wimpish. Very wimpish, I
Everyone
think.
hates a win quitter.
Yeah.
Everyone hates
But it's a smart thing.
It's a
It
smart
is
thing to
definitely
do.
And, that's why I never became a good athlete. In any way, I'm, not competitive enough.
Does that mean you don't think Magnus is also going to win this position? You don't have faith in
I have faith in the young one,
The young
Christopher.
one.
I like the records. What if he sets the record?
Kaya, the last time you supported Magnus, you bet for Magnus. I ended up in a Teletubby costume.
No, that's true.
You could have done all sorts to Simon there.
There's no
yeah,
way.
Exactly.
No Teletubby costume for me. I'll just clarify that. We have to find a very big costume. So,
That win-quitting thing is the most frustrating thing in the world when you play an opponent online. One game, for example, they have white, they win on time in a lost position, and then they refuse to give you a rematch. It makes my blood boil. And, that's what you've just done to Simon.
And I'm
Cruel.
proud of it.
just cruel. I'm desperately trying to win back my pint, but this is not going to work.
I'm going to regret it now if Magnus wins. Yeah.
But, I mean, the only reason I'm saying that is I quite like what Black's doing. I mean, Magnus is taking risks, and I thought if the game had gone another way, with Magnus trying to, take no risks, not sacrificing anything, playing it very slowly, very positionally, he'll just outplay Cristopher. And I totally understand what Magnus is playing. He's great at every form of chess, and I still think he's probably favourite to win. He is the world champion. But I kind of, I think it's getting very exciting now. And, the young Cristopher does thrive in interesting positions. So that's why I thought it was an interesting, thing to go on. And I fought against this move as well. Now Black should move his knight to the edge of the board. This is another reason why I thought, Black might be doing
Attack this
okay.
bishop, yeah.
Yeah, because, if that bishop that's just moved can stay on that diagonal, then I really like White's position, because it just looks so strong. But Black can now start playing with his pieces and start harassing them. You know, and I think it's just an unbalanced position, but it's it looks like looks fun.
It does look like a fun position, but I kind of have a question for you, because the position to me looks totally wild. Should Black be kind of like playing like Simon is, like in just enhancing the tension, or should he perhaps kind of go swap everything off?
Well, if you could swap everything off, that'd be amazing. But there's a lot of things to swap.
Well, I did think that it was possible. You could first of all swap off the knights. I know. It lengthens the rook. I'm aware of that. But then you could also, because the bishop is unprotected, actually, no. Oh.
You can maybe
attack the bishop first.
It's kind of. Yeah, I mean, you could move the bishop in front of the queen, couldn't you? Potentially.
Yeah, because bishop takes bishop, unfortunately, is this banner in the works.
Yeah, OK, first. So, yeah. Forking, yeah.
Yeah, one piece will drop there. So potentially, for example, you could move your knight to the edge of the board.
Yeah.
I think white will drop his bishop back this way, maybe, but if it drops this way, you could try and trade it off. Or you could potentially block it up at some point, push this pawn, not in this exact position, but yeah, I guess the risk involved here is that white's going to start ganging up on this pawn already, and the black king is going to be very vulnerable. I think this is making Cristopher hesitate from putting his knight on the edge of the board. OK, he plays a very risky move instead. He pushes a pawn, and that weakens the king even further.
That looks crazily risky to me, because look at that square next to the pawn, David, as well, right?
The square,
yeah.
If a knight ever lands here safely, it's just going to be game over. But Cristopher and all of the young generation nowadays, they're very concrete. They don't see ghosts. They're fearless. Yes, it might weaken a square, but if it works move by move, then why not? And he's asked a big question of this bishop. If this bishop retreats, then actually this will favour black hugely after a knight trade. Suddenly white has these two weak pawns, and white's king is open. So I don't think we'll see a bishop retreat from Magnus. If knight takes knight, I guess the queen will come out and recapture. I don't think you can take the bishop here because white's rook will recapture, and this king is too open. So we would see, for example, the black queen come out, the white bishop drop back, and what has Cristopher gained here? Yes, the queen is active, but it's not really going anywhere anytime soon. Bit of an odd choice, but the computer quite likes it. Still thinking it's roughly balanced.
Yep.
Do you know who Magnus is playing like in this game? Or at least who I think Magnus's play reminds me of.
A bit of that. I don't.
Give us a hint.
You were going to say, I think. Were you going to say Alpha Zero?
I was going to say like even out of Stockfish.
Yeah, just reminds me of Alpha Zero, just giving up pawns. Alpha Zero is obsessed with the two bishops as well.
Yeah.
I've seen Alpha Zero games where white gives up 4 pawns just for the bishop pair and some kind of long-term attack, which from human eyes look like actually it's not that dangerous, but long-term. White gets the attack, and it's all about whether this unrivaled dark square bishop, this one can later, not right now because it gets captured by the black knight, but whether it can later target the black king. Alpha Zero also loves its pawn centres, so even what Magnus did earlier, giving up a pawn on this square, it just really brings back shades. And we know that Magnus was inspired in early 2019. The best form of his life was when he was inspired by Alpha Zero.
Interesting.
Yeah. And this whole idea of just dominating the dark squares is very, very powerful.
I mean, I wonder if you can throw the queen over now. I mean...
in the current position.
I want to get more pieces towards black's king, but I wonder about it. But I'm kind of like not wondering too much, maybe. I mean, it's a kind of natural move because... you know, black's king is very weak. You know, there's holes around it, there's diagonals towards it, there's a lot of white pieces, but I'm not going to cause any damage without the queen joining in. I was thinking even maybe rook takes pawn there, potentially.
Oh, wow, nice.
But, I mean, I don't really believe it, but you can see here I have a checkmate threat, so at least it gives black something to think about, this kind of idea, and I really want to get the queen into the game. In this position. So, I mean, that's the kind of thing I'm sure Magnus has to calculate, right? Because if it works, it could be extremely strong. And, of course, he can't see the evaluation bar. You know, for us, we can see it doesn't win. But for Magnus, you know, maybe he's thinking there's a big move here.
Yeah, and I guess in this position, black could defend by bringing the rook up and then blocking any checks. But it's still hanging by a thread for black. Black would have an extra knight here, but still, I mean, ongoing attack against this pawn. But yeah, I mean, there's two options, right, as you say, Simon, in the current position. Either you just swap the knights off, you take the knights off the board, and then you drop back with your bishop, play positionally, long term, or you just do something crazy. It could be a sacrifice on this square, it could be a sacrifice here. This crossed my mind as well. Bishop takes pawn, and then jumping in with the knight with a check. We talked about this square. The king would move, I guess, and knight takes with a check. OK, he just goes for the slower approach. Maybe in this position, a rook versus two knights, he couldn't find a knockout blow. And let's go back to the game. It's all about the power of these bishops.
Yeah, and your instincts were correct, David. And gosh, it's an exciting game, and it's also going to be such an exciting day. And well, we love it when everyone at home kind of interacts with us and sends us their tweets. And Mohammed Farah has caught on the fact that we seem to have some catchphrases. Ooh. David's favourite is, me and my arrows. That's true. Apparently, I say, fizzle out to a draw quite a bit.
I've heard that before, yeah.
And Simon's peculiar.
Very British.
Peculiar game. Very peculiar. Peculiar scenario with peculiar commentators.
Exactly.
It's easy to be on television.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And so thank you, Mohammed, for that great tweet. And if you two want to just send us your pictures, your photos, tweets like Mohammed's, then please do so using the hashtag #ChessChamps, and we will feature them on the show.
Look at what's happening.
Meanwhile.
I mean, wow, this is... Don't move pawns in front of your king. Oh, hang on a minute. Do move pawns in front of your king. What a peculiar idea.
Wow. What a peculiar game in general. I mean, Black has broken the rules several times, moving knights to the edge of the board. Magnus has broken the rules by not castling, sacrificing pawns. And now Cristopher, you opening up his own king by pushing pawns himself. And he's forced White's dark-squared bishop far away, and now he's going for the White king. Both kings are targets here. The Black king, for now, is safe-ish, but there are threats against Magnus's king. Black's queen wants to come down and take the White h-pawn now with a nasty check. There's another check available the Black queen can go for. White's central pawn, the e-pawn, huge pressure on that right now. I like what he's doing. Just all out, all at Magnus. This is how to kind of beat the top players in the world, just show them no respect. It might backfire some of the time, but if it works, wow, this game might go down in history.
So Magnus is then dark-squared bishop now. Is it a worse piece than it was?
It's still a good piece, but White's dark-squared bishop can't get at the Black king yet. If the White-squared bishop drops back and checks that Black king in the corner, then the Black knight will take off that bishop. The Black knight covers some very important squares. So there's also a chance White's dark-squared bishop, it's loose, and loose pieces, we know they drop off. So there's going to be some tactics against that piece if Magnus isn't careful. Suddenly, I love Black's position. I mean, it's still objectively in the balance as we see with the computer, but anything could happen.
Yeah.
I'm just gutted that bet wasn't taken because I'm actually. It's just. You were going to say, Ivanka, but it looks to me like any result now. I mean, it's such a mess, and what brave play from the young Cristopher. So he's, admirable play so far.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it looks like Magnus is going to have to give up material here, and there you see it. The queen takes the pawn with check. The rook will step up and block that check. And the checks will carry on as the queen moves along and checks the king on the diagonal.
Yeah,
such a
wild position, though, because even though White's king is pretty exposed, it doesn't feel like Black's king is all that safe either. One wrong move and that's it. The game is over for either side, actually.
I'm wondering if Black was a little bit greedy there, to be honest, because now White's king seems very safe to me, and I agree with you, Ivanka. I think it's Black's king that could come under some fire, those bishops, the rook, and a fianchettoed rook, which White has, that rook in front of the king, is a tremendous piece defending. You can't checkmate, really, when your opponent's got fianchettoed rook. So I'm kind of a bit fearful, actually, for Black's position, without doing any calculation, that is, though.
Yeah, but I think maybe the bishop will have to start coming out and start attacking the White rook.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, it was such a good defender.
Yeah. And White's king now wants to hide in the corner on h1. The White rook will still protect it there. But, yeah, as you guys say, the price of every move is so high right now. The stakes are just rising move by move. Cristopher slightly lower on the clock. That could be a factor. But as Ivanka said, he plays very well. Good instincts when low on time. If the Black rooks could somehow line up with the White king, maybe some chances. But Yeah, if black's initiative, if the momentum dries up, then it's all going to be about those white bishops. Okay, Cristopher takes a pawn. The white king does hide. So right now the material count is black has an extra pawn, but the material is secondary here. It's just about whether white bishops can get to that black king.
Do you think Cristopher will try to put his rook on the G line and just go for broke, you know, sacrifice material just to get at the white king?
Yeah.
I think he's threatening to win a piece here as well, isn't he? Just by moving the bishop all the way back. I mean, look at those pieces on the file right on the edge of the board. They're all lined up there, but that white rook is very powerful, lined up against two of black's most powerful pieces, the queen and the king eventually. So Cristopher has to be very careful here, really careful in this position.
Jovanka's move here, rook to g8. This would involve a sacrifice, as you mentioned. The bishop can take this rook. But now there's a big threat of the bishop jumping out the way with a check. How do we defend against that? I mean, I only see a couple of ways. We have to guard this square. Either we use the white rook to protect the square from the side, or we use the white queen. I'm not sure which square is best.
Love the idea, though. I love that. I mean, I love these ideas. And if you can swing the knight around to g3, woof! You only need about 3 moves. Surely there's enough time to do that. But I mean, that would be fantastic. So I really is he going to do it next move? I mean,
wait.
See the evaluation bar swing across. Maybe this was a bit of a slip-up by Cristopher Yu. It makes sense, he's attacking this bishop.
Yeah.
The bishop only really has one safe square. It, again, doesn't want to go into the centre yet to check, because it can just be captured by the black knight, so Magnus drops it back to d6 instead, hitting this rook. And the rook moves. Okay, hitting the bishop now. So how does he keep this bishop alive?
So he's doing Jovanka's plan, but he's trying to keep both rooks on the board, and but it does seem like the diagonals towards black's king are going to be very exposed as well.
Yeah. For example, if you take this pawn just to guard your bishop, as you say, Simon, this diagonal, if you just land one check later for white, it's going to be game over. At the moment, you can't, because the black knight covers this square and this square. Me and my arrows. The knight covers these 2 squares. But, yeah, I guess this is the plan, right? Cristopher wants to switch his rook. How do we defend against that?
Wild stuff. Completely wild.
Crazy. And the evaluation bar might favour white, but, I mean, all 3 results still on the cards for sure. This is the current position. OK, he needed to defend this bishop, Magnus, so he plays the most natural move. He takes a pawn. And whose attack is going to be quicker?
And surely now the rook has to move over. I mean, Cristopher's then got 3 pieces against white's king. That one rook in front of white's king is saving it, and the rook is a great defender. But, you know, it's a little bit scary.
Yeah.
And
big threat.
Yeah, massive threat there, which would win the game if you can get that check in. So, on the defensive, Magnus.
Yeah, maybe it's time to use the sleeping rook on the A1 square, move it up to the 2nd row. I love these kind of moves.
Just to guard this square. I mean, I'm scared what happens if black brings his remaining rook into the game now. Oh, sorry, mouse slip. To this square, sorry, the E8 square, threatening to come down with a deadly check.
Looks nasty.
Suddenly, black's attack looks more dangerous than white's.
What if you moved also the bishop all the way back, as well as Jovanka's move? Sorry for looking at, you know, jumping ahead there, but potentially this move defends and attacks, because you're defending that check that black was planning, but...
This bishop is pinned as well.
That could be...
Yeah, it looks scary to allow some check on this square, but at the moment, white has everything covered. Maybe black just has to defend his bishop. I can't see anything else in that position. But this one, I mean, it looks really awkward, this tension between the white rook, the black bishop, the black queen. But how do you overwhelm? How do you win a piece? It's all about whether black can get his rook into the attack and whether white can get his rook into the defense. These are the 2 sleeping pieces. So tense. And, OK, Magnus moves his queen instead. That's the one option we didn't consider. The idea is that the bishop check now is met by a short-term queen sacrifice. You take the bishop, the white queen drops, but then the black queen drops afterwards, and white wins a piece in that process. So you are covering all the checks. Actually, it makes sense. Now there's threats of this bishop check for white. The queen drops in. How scary is this? So many pieces near this white king, but no threat yet that I can see. Is it time for white to maybe bring this piece into the game? Oof.
What a game.
What a game.
And remember, Cristopher Yu, 15 points. He is in 9th place, currently 1 spot away from top 8 who qualifies for the knockout stage. The youngest player in the tournament, playing a fearless game here against world number 1, Magnus Carlsen.
It looks really scary for white, but if you're objective, there is no threat.
Yeah.
So this means that you have some extra time, and you kind of mentioned bringing in the rook. I was just also thinking, yeah, that's much more Magnus's style, right?
I mean, the white light squared bishop could have moved as well to attack a few things, but this makes sense. And I don't really see how that black rook at the top of the board is getting in the game. That's the problem, maybe, for Cristopher Yu. He doesn't have any safe squares or any active safe squares to go to.
I can't see any plan for black. Yeah. That's actually maybe the problem, right? I mean, black's got the 3 pieces around white's king, but they're not really threatening anything. And the rule is when you're attacking, which black's trying to do, you need to bring in your reinforcements. So you start to look at the knight and the other rook, and as you said, David, the other rook has no squares it can come into, and the knight also has no roots it can move to. So logically, what actually can black do in this position? What piece, what plan can black play? I can't see a move here for black, you know, which is worrying, obviously, if you can't see a move, and white can just improve as he's done with the last move. Yeah. Anyone see an idea for black? I'm really struggling, actually, here to find a plan.
He has to move soon. He's only got 1 minute, and I'm the same as you, Simon. I can barely see a productive move for black. OK, he moves his rook. So I'm not exactly sure what the idea behind that one is. Maybe it will shuffle across to the H file, add more pressure there, but I guess that's also why the evaluation bar is on white's side right now, because black is struggling for plans. Magnus needs a plan of his own, however, and which piece can be improved now? You don't want to touch the white rook in front of the king. You don't want to touch the white queen, or really the other white rook, so it might be the bishops by process of elimination.
Could you also try to swap of queens? You know, we kind of say that a lot.
Okay. Well done, Ivanka.
He sees the future.
Yeah.
Does that favour white?
Well, we kind of have this rule that when you're on the defensive and your king is feeling slightly unsafe, I mean slightly in the British way, you know, it's very unsafe, try and swap of queens. The queen's a dangerous attacker.
Yeah, and also, I go on about this a lot, but the 2 bishops, when you have the bishop pair, the fewer pieces remain, the more powerful those bishops become. If the queens disappear, white's bishops will be free to just wreak havoc. Yeah, it looks like a very strong, safe move there by Magnus. The queens do disappear. And now we enter a completely different phase of the game. There won't be checkmates yet, at least not against the white king. But the black king in the corner feels vulnerable to the bishops.
Ooh, and Cristopher Yu, he has ticked under 1 minute on the clock now, ticking down to 30 seconds. But he looks so calm, this 15-year-old. Impressive stuff.
Yeah, very impressive. I mean, he's played a great game so far, right? Yes, the evaluation bar might think white is doing well, but he's been so creative, Cristopher. Still fighting very well, and this game's far from over. OK, white's rook comes back to that great defensive square, and black pushes a pawn. Harry the H-pawn.
Yeah, I mean, he's done well, but it does seem like those bishops, as you mentioned, look at white, you know...
Oh, no.
Yeah, I mean, it's an open board. When I mean open board, there's so many lines which there's no pawns are blocking, and bishops just work so well. And look at the rook. The rook is also now coming in. It's starting to really look a bit dicey for black, I think, now.
Yeah, let's examine the problems. There are a few problems here. Firstly, it's level material, but this pawn can be taken any time. This pawn's actually very, very weak, and as Simon mentions, the rook is coming in with a nasty check, supported by this bishop. How do you stop that? The only move to stop that is to move your bishop away again, but white's rook will have several ways in, including by just going after this pawn. OK, Cristopher Yu tries to break his own rook out of its current prison. It's completely dominated by white's bishops, but OK, where is the knockout? Feels like this rook is almost trapped, but you can flick in this bishop move, you can flick in a check with the white rook. Too many options for Magnus, almost.
I mean, there's 2 bishops and a rook attacking the black king now, and that is a lot of pieces. I mean, you know, I love the idea. I mean, the rook check looks the most obvious, and he's played it.
Yeah, and then, you know, you can also play the bishop in to attack.
Or this one? Or...
Yeah, I mean, the bishop to one square, yeah.
To undermine this bishop, which is actually pinned on the 8th rank. This looked very strong. Magnus went for a different move. He dropped his rook back. So I guess he wants to create some mating attack with his bishops now. OK, he wanted to drop back with a check, so this was blocked by Cristopher Yu. Very good move, or at least very logical move. Just blocking any checks. OK, he's got his king slightly safer than it was. Fighting so well, Cristopher.
That last move seems key, doesn't it? You know, bringing that bishop to stop a lot of checks. And Magnus now switching plans a little bit. So tying down Black's rook, can't move because you win the knight. And Black's got to find a move here. That's a really clever move. That's such a clever move.
Relentless, isn't it? Just when you think maybe you have a chance, Magnus goes, no. There you go. You have to put your knight on the edge of the board.
And now the bishop
and now
is going the other way. It's really clever play.
Ruthless.
Yeah, it's just about these bishops. They are dominating everything right now. It looks like Magnus, big favourite.
And a big result in the game between Levon and Prague. A win and 3 points for Levon. That is super good news for the American, because he needs to stack up points today to qualify for the knockout stage. Niemann in huge trouble in his game. If he loses this, chances are even bigger he will be in that 8th place, who currently faces Magnus Carlsen in the quarterfinals. Wow.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be a very dramatic last couple of rounds of the prelims.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Magnus has grabbed a pawn with his last move. It's still level material. Black took a pawn as well, but the Black knight's running out of squares.
It's not just the knight that's the problem, it's the Black king. I mean, that is in a checkmating net.
Wow,
and
what a move, though, from Cristopher Yu.
Using all tactics to try and survive this one. The rook is lined up against the king, but I guess, you know, the king can simply move if worst case scenario. And it looks like Hans is literally doing everything to come 8th. So that's a joke, of course. Just clarify.
Meanwhile, the white king did get out of the way of any potential discovered checks on that g-file. The white king just sidestepped, and the black knight had to run. This knight's really struggled. It's gone to the edge of the board, it got kicked back, now it's gone to the top of the board, and it's running out of squares still. Magnus, even if the rooks come off, to be honest, white's rook is better than the black rook right now, but even if the rooks come off, it looks very good for white. All of black's pawns are weak.
And it is a loss for Hans Niemann in his game against Ivan Saric. That means Ivan Saric, he climbs on the table, still outside top 8, Niemann still inside. But that 8th place is getting closer for him. And if Magnus wins this game, it is looking more likely that Magnus will win the preliminaries. It's 1 point for Arjun Erigaisi and 2nd point with a draw in this round against Wojciech.
Yeah. Very tense.
Yeah.
It's going to be a brilliant finish today. You know, we're going to have 2 games left after this. I mean, who knows who's going to qualify and play who tomorrow? Yeah. It's going to be so exciting.
I know. Yeah.
There've literally been times as well on the tour that it's come down to the last few moves in order to see who gets through. Often one player's finished, waiting, hoping that another game goes their way and hoping that a certain result appears. Meanwhile, Magnus, he's safe, he's through to the knockouts, but he dropped his bishop back, attacking black's rook, and the rook shuffled into the corner. Whoa, it's not a square you want to use.
He's trying everything to defend this, but this is like, you know, the bishops are just... I mean, it all started with this beautiful pawn sacrifice that Magnus played. He played this, as you said, alpha zero kind of move to get the bishops working in such a beautiful way. And it's been a great game so far, this one. Really, really good. Yeah. Just got to now coordinate a little bit better with the rook. How do you move it? Do you try to attack the bishop? Do you try to get it to check the king 1 file forwards, which you can't do at the moment? There's many sort of tempting options, aren't there?
Yeah, I know. A lot of tempting moves. Like, I was thinking you could just go pawn hunting, but he's gone for attacking the bishop. Still feels like black's king is walking such a tightrope. I feel like it's going to get checkmated any time now, you know, with those 2 bishops like sniffing around.
Yeah, it's looking very dodgy. Oh dear, it's never nice moving your piece back to... If he just moves his knight back, he's got, you know, them all in the starting squares, ready for the next game. So, you know, get them set up. So
I think we might see checkmate end this game. It feels like the black king has got almost 0 escape squares. It's only got the 1 next to it right now. And Magnus, he can give a check with his light squared bishop. He can give a check with his rook. Looks so promising. We saw Magnus as well lean in after that last move was played. He smells the checkmate. He senses it. And at the very least, he will be able to win a couple of pawns, most likely. But Yeah, where is the killer blow?
And also, what's Black's next move? This is always worth thinking about when you're playing chess. Don't just think of your own ideas, because if you can't see a win, think, what's my opponent going to play next? And you try to find a move for your opponent. And again, if you get into the habit of doing that, and this is why Magnus might have played a quiet move. He's doing that. I think he's thinking, what can my opponent move next? And most of the moves that Black can play lose something actually here. So this is just a great way to think when you're playing. So he's moved the king, but now he's lining it up to a bishop check at some point. Oh, OK, and he's closing the net around the king here with that pawn.
The deadly threat now is for White's rook to step one square further forward onto the 7th rank.
One
Check
second.
that Black king.
Did he make a move? Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
He made it.
Left.
Oh, but that's it.
That's it. I mean, look at that rook. It's going to give a check. King is forced to step backwards. Game over.
Yeah.
It is over, but what a fight from Cristopher Yu against the world champion Magnus Carlsen. But it is 3